Hey there, I'm author Sarah A. Chrisman.
I'm her husband, Gabriel Chrisman.
And today we're going to talk to you about encouraging a culture of books. In the 19th century, there was this idea of a culture of books and how important it was. And today when people hear of the word literacy, they tend to think of children learning their ABCs. But literacy is so much more than that, and a culture of books is so much more than that. Because it's not enough to just know how to read. You have to actually do it. You have to do it all the time. You have to constantly be reading books, thinking deeply about them, and engaging with them, and helping other people engage with them as well.
There's a big difference between the sorts of short-form texts that people encounter all the time these days and long-form texts like books that require sustained attention and that can convey much more complex ideas.
And when people read books and share them with their friends, with other people, that develops a canon of shared literature. And that helps them have common frames of reference that are longer form than just very short little shallow things. It helps them engage really deeply with things. For example, if I were to say, oh, this thing that happened in the news reminds me of the end of George Orwell's Animal Farm, where the animals can no longer tell the difference between the pigs and the humans. Now, to understand that reference, you have to have read the book. But if you have read the book, then you understand that it connects to a lot of very deep concepts that Orwell was discussing in that book. And any book you read has equally broad and deep concepts that it's discussing. There used to be a common canon of literature that people were expected to have read in our society. And in America, that included the Bible. It included also, though, the works of the ancient Greeks. It included the Iliad and the Odyssey. It included Canterbury Tales for a lot of people. And so there was this broad base of things that if you were an intelligent person, you were just expected to have read these things. Now, maybe some of those were assigned in school, but not necessarily. And I actually get kind of irritated when I ask, oh, have you read this book? And the response is, oh, they don't require books to be read anymore, because you shouldn't have to be required to read them. You should be reading them on your own because you want to be a more intelligent person. You want to better yourself. You want to engage more deeply with life and the world. That's what reading is all about. It's not just getting a grade. It's not just being forced to do something because you're assigned to do it in school. It is actually just being a better person, just being a better citizen and engaging more fully with the world around you. That's what reading does. It's not some chore. It is one of the blessings of life, and it's really important. And I think that my favorite librarian here will agree with me on that.
I certainly do. And it's something where there are so many benefits that you get from engaging with these longer form texts, especially in printed form, that you can't get anywhere else. They form paths in your brain that are the basis for a lot of critical thinking, for the ability to have sustained attention spans.
Empathy is something that is fostered by reading long form books.
Because you can understand more and actually gain empathy for a character as you learn more about them and learn a complex story that they're based in that you just can't get from any sort of short introduction or a short bio of someone. It doesn't give you the same connection to a character and the understanding of another person.
And they also help you think logically. They help you to think critically. They help you to form an actual opinion about something that's not just based on, well, I like so-and-so, and he says this, so I'm just going to say what so-and-so says. That's not how your opinions should be formed. They should be formed by things you've actually thought about and things you've actually given consideration to. And books help you with that because sometimes you'll agree with the author, sometimes you won't agree with the author, but either way, you will get to encounter their entire point of view and why they think the way they do. And you can make an educated opinion over whether you agree with them or not. And either way, it's a valid form of growth.
Books also, just the way that they're structured and the way they're organized, has an influence on people's thought. That if you don't encounter organized thought that actually goes from one idea to another and that explains things in a logical order, or that tells a story in an order that actually makes sense and in a duration that actually conveys all the detail involved in a story, if you're talking about a novel, these help you form the ways that you think about things. And if you don't have exposure to those sorts of structures, people don't have a good example of how to organize their thought.
Mm-hmm. And as humans, we are storytelling animals. Other animals use tools, other animals build things, but we're the only animals that tell stories. And it's one of the beauties of being human, and it's one of the things that makes us special. And so it's important to continue with that, to really live a full life and be the best human you can be.
You're not an animal of sound bites.
Right. We're not an animal of sound bites. And yes, I know you're a good animal too. We love cats. But so that brings us to the question of how do we encourage a culture of books, because that is so important. Now, first and foremost, in broad caps, I would say read. It's not just enough to know how to read, you have to actually do it. You have to engage with books. I don't know how many of you have noticed, but I try really hard to, in the background of all these videos I make, always have books within view. I don't always manage to pull it off, but I try.
Now luckily it's easy in our house because they are everywhere.
It's easy in our house because they are everywhere. And these are books that we read and use and constantly refer to. I'm always pulling these down off the shelf, constantly in my work as a writer, and when we have people visiting, as we're discussing various things, throughout the discussion I will very frequently say, oh, I have a book for that, and then I'll race to a different room where the book happens to be, and I'll bring it back and flip to it and read a passage which we will then discuss. And this is a way of engaging critically with various things and making connections between things, which is very important. And so surrounding yourself with books helps because you're more likely to read them in the first place. And it also gives you a chance to refer to them, which is very important. There are constant counselors and friends, books are, and that is very important. And also to surround, and they're not just ornaments. Some people these days are buying them just to look good on their shelves, and it boggles my mind that is happening, because they are things of value. And along the idea of books being things of value, you need to show that you value them by buying them. You need to support the authors who put a lot of time and energy and resources into creating these books. People value what they pay for. And so if you value a culture of books, if you value a culture of literacy, which I really hope you all do, you need to buy books. You need to support the authors who create them. You need to support the industry that puts them out. You need to show everyone who comes into your home that you want books in the world.
And you think they have a valuable position. Even if the authors are long dead, you're supporting the publishers thinking that it's a valuable proposition to actually republish these classics.
Right. And another thing, if you own the books, then you own the power. Because the more you read, the more you know. And the more powerful you grow. If you own the books, you own the power. And it's been an issue in recent years where certain publishers are retroactively editing books in the way that the original author may not have agreed with. And if you own a copy of an earlier edition, you can see these changes have been made. Whereas if you don't own it, if you're just borrowing it from somewhere, and you probably at that point are borrowing the latest edition because books that are loaned out wear out, then you're maybe not getting the full intent of what the author tried to say. And also, very important, set an example. We are social creatures. Nothing is as contagious as example. We're never good or bad without imitators. And I think a lot of people saw that very much in the past few years, that peer pressure is a real thing, and we see examples, and that has a big effect on the society around us. So be seen reading. Always be seen reading. In public, it used to be so much more common to see people reading at bus stops, in dentists' offices as they waited for their appointment, in coffee shops, anywhere people had extra time, they would have their books out. And what that did was, in the first place, it demonstrated that they valued books. It demonstrated that they valued literacy. It demonstrated that they valued critical thinking. It demonstrated that they valued intelligence. It also demonstrated that they supported the author who had written that book, that they wanted more books in the world. Now, if people are just poking at their cell phones, and even if they may be reading an ebook, the rest of the world doesn't see that. All they see is person interacting with cell phone, and all that is an advertisement for that cell phone. It's not an advertisement for the book, even if they are reading one. And so think about the example that you're setting to the world, and ask yourself if that example is one that you want, that is representative of what you want the world to become, because it's very important. So, anything else to add?
Well, I mean, all of these things are incredibly important. As a librarian, as someone who works at a small college, I see all the time how things are changing, how the culture is shifting, how students are coming to college and are not ready to read a whole book. They've read only excerpts their entire educational career. And it is not an easy thing to get people to sort of understand the value, but it is really critical to understand. For people who've never read a whole book, it is really hard to explain how they can convey more information, how they can create more learning, how they can give you a different way of interacting with both information and the world.
Right.
And it's really hard to convey that. So the big thing is just to start reading whatever it is you're interested in, and you'll find that one book leads to another.
Absolutely, absolutely. Every time I read a book, I wind up creating a reading list of other books it has led me to want to read. And that's a wonderful thing. And that's how I do a lot of my research, because books lead to other books. People ask me, oh, how can you possibly research without Google? It's like, that's not a very good way to research in the first place. You read a good book, and as you're reading it, you take notes on, oh, well, this is referencing this other book that I should look into, or this is referencing this other topic that I should find a book on, and that just spider webs out. It just leads you to this whole new world. And every book leads you to a different aspect of the world, the beautiful, wonderful world we live in, that we want to know more about.
And eventually, of course, if you have a picture in your head and you can't find a book that has that exact picture, it might lead you to write a book.
True, true. So I hope we've given you some things to think about today, and I hope that you will go out, buy books, and be seen reading books. These are two very important things. Value a culture of literacy, value books, buy books, be seen reading them. And I hope you have a great day, and happy reading.